We're back now, and you're looking at 30 Rockefeller Plaza here in New York as one more way of showing you what is necessary tonight. George W. Bush crawling up 30 Rockefeller Plaza with that streamer in red, 81 electoral votes. As we pull out, you can see John Kerry appropriately on the left with 77 electoral votes. We have a lot of ways of showing you that tonight, both electronic line. All right, we're going to call the state of South Carolina. It took longer than we thought it might, but it stays safely in the Republican column. George W. Bush, our projected winner of the 8 electoral votes in South Carolina. So let us take you to the map now. That's how it was just a moment ago. It changes as we fill in South Carolina. George Bush goes up to 89 electoral votes at this time. Still some distance from 270. And so far, both candidates are getting all the states that we expected them to. Going into tonight, the conventional wisdom was that George Bush was at about 222 and John Kerry was about 207, of course, with those 9 to 11 battleground states that are still out there. There have been some voting problems, and we want to talk about that by first going to the state of Florida and NBC's Kerry Sanders. Kerry, what's going on down there now this time?
Well, Tom, I think it really is going to boil down to the absentee ballots. Not so much a problem in how they were delivered, but really having them all counted. If it is a close race, and of course Florida 4 years ago was only 537 votes, then the absentee ballots are going to become very important because more than 1 million were sent out and then returned to the actual supervisor of elections across the state. To give you an example, in Palm Beach County, they have already received 70,000 absentee ballots. As you come a little bit further south into the Fort Lauderdale area, there are 96,000 absentee ballots that have been returned. I'm actually in the location where those absentee ballots, and more will be coming in tonight. They have not even begun to count those yet. They have to then certify them. They have to make sure that people didn't double vote. Then they have to open up the envelopes and go through that. And then down in Dade County, they have about 94,000. They have begun to look at them there, but have only gotten through about a third of the 94,000. What that all means just in these urban counties to the south is it's going to take some time. So if it is a close race in Florida, in all likelihood, we may not be able to determine whether there is a winner in Florida tonight because those absentee ballots will still be out there. The chairman of the Kerry Edwards campaign is here with us, Congressman Kendrick Meek. Conventional wisdom would suggest, because the Republicans have done a stronger push for absentee ballots, that it would lean towards them. Your reaction?
Well, in all 3 counties, you have touchscreen counties. A lot of folks decided to use absentee ballots, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, because they wanted a paper trail. So we may not see what we've noticed historically as it relates to Republicans being the winner of absentee ballot voting. You have Palm Beach County, which is a heavily Democratic county. Broward County, which we're in now, is a heavily Democratic county. And also in Miami-Dade County, we're very, very competitive. So the night is early, and we'll see. And in Florida, automatic recount within a 1% margin here in state.
Exactly. And of course, the automatic recount would kick in, as he said. And that's without even calling for a recount. Across the state, there are still some polls open, people waiting in line, but those lines are now dwindling. But all the polls have officially closed. People had to be in line by 7 o'clock. And there are 2 time zones, of course, in the state, Tom. So those polls are now closed except for the folks who are waiting to get through those final lines.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Kerry Sanders in Florida. 26% of the vote has been counted in Florida so far. Again, a reminder to you, we based our projection on models from a variety of precincts across the state. We can't tell you for sure where that vote is coming from, but traditionally, Dade County, which is Miami, and then Palm Beach and West Palm Beach up the coast of Florida come in a bit later, so that will probably be altered before the course of this night. Let's go to NBC's Chip Reed now, down in our Making Your Vote Count Center. Chip?
Well, hi, Tom. I'm going to take you from Florida up to Ohio once again. Ohio has been litigation central today. Numerous lawsuits filed there. For example, earlier today, there was one when people would show up at the polling place. If they had applied for an absentee ballot, that would show up on the records, and they were not allowed to vote provisionally. Well, the Democrats took that to court. The judge overruled it and said, look, if you show up, no matter what the circumstances, if there's any question about your right to vote, you get to cast a provisional ballot, and we'll determine after Election Day whether or not that counts. And now I'm joined by Rick Pildes of NYU Law School and an NBC legal analyst, and another very interesting legal case coming out of Ohio. Tell me about this one.
Well, we've had these voters in these very long lines in Ohio.
4 hours, even 6 hours
long. And we have dozens of affidavits from these voters filed in federal court asking to be allowed to cast a paper ballot instead of waiting 4 hours in line. A federal judge has now says that's right. They have a right to cast those ballots by paper ballot. People have been leaving the polls in Ohio because the lines are so long. This is an effort to take care of that problem.
Give me an idea of how extraordinary this is. This isn't asking to vote provisionally. This is asking to create, on the spot, a new system for voting so that people don't just get up and leave the line and walk away.
It's a product of the tremendous turnout in Ohio, the lack of enough machines to deal with the number of people at the polls, and a provisional remedy being created on the spot to allow these people to vote and to stop deterring people from actually casting a ballot.
So we have some creative judging going on in Ohio. We'll see if it sticks or if it gets appealed. Is it going to be appealed, or
we don't know if it's going to be appealed or not yet, but these people are probably voting right now with these paper ballots.
Extraordinary. So Ohio, litigation central tonight, Tom.
Thank you very much, Chip Reed. We want to remind you that a federal judge has issued a temporary restraining order in Philadelphia. Absentee ballots can't be counted there until 9:30 tomorrow morning. That was a result of an appeal from the Republican Party saying they didn't have access to those absentee ballots. So there will be litigation across the country, and we may not have a resolution of the presidential race before the night is out as a result of all of that. Let's go to Tampa, Florida now. Well, first of all, we have a Senate race for you in Oklahoma. This one stays in the Republican column. Tom Coburn, the winner, a former U.S. House of Representatives member, a doctor who had kind of a scorched earth policy in the course of his campaign, very conservative, lots of controversies. A woman said that she'd been sterilized without her permission. And he had a lot to say about sexuality and sexual orientation in the state of Oklahoma as well, Tim.
Tom, he ran against Congressman Brad Carson. It was a tight race for some time. No one ever thought it would be competitive to replace Don Nichols, but Coburn has now prevailed, and that's an important hold for the Republicans.
All right. We're going to go to Tampa, Florida. We tried to just a few moments ago, and we had some technical difficulties. We're back now with Ralph Reed, who's one of the architects of the Republican Party's entree into the conservative Christians of this country, what is called the cultural conservatives. Mr. Reed, the president is running very strongly tonight among people who say that moral values were important to them. But can that be a double-edged sword? Can it drive other people away from the president?
No, I don't think so, Tom. In fact, right here in Florida along the I-4 corridor, with about 25% of the vote in, the president is overperforming versus 4 years ago in some of those more centrist and ticket-splitting suburbs. And we think the reason why is because the activity and the energy that we were able to harness among the core supporters of this president, 102,438 volunteers here in Florida. They contacted 1.5 million voters in the last 4 days, and because of their efforts, the Sunshine State's going to be in the president's column again tonight.
Let me ask you about something that happened in the last 10 days or so in the campaign that surprised a lot of people. The man you used to work for, Pat Robertson, told Paul Azan on CNN that he had an Oval Office conversation with the president warning him against the war in Iraq, and according to Reverend Robertson, the president said there will be no casualties. That got a lot of circulation. The president denied that conversation ever took place. What was going on with Pat Robertson in that conversation?
Tom, I don't know. I wouldn't really feel comfortable speculating. I wasn't in the meeting. What I can tell you is I know this president, and this president is someone who, as commander-in-chief, when he sends American men and women into battle, he does so reluctantly, as a last resort and not a first resort, and with the full knowledge that there could be casualties.
All right, thanks very much, Ralph Reed, who's in Florida tonight and just predicted that Florida will be in the president's column before the night is out. When we come back in a moment, a man who in many ways made John Kerry the nominee of the Democratic Party, former Vermont Governor Howard Dean. He'll be with us in a moment here at Democracy Plaza. Decision 2004, back in a moment.